Hello everyone, welcome to the third video in the series on how to contribute to the DataMiner documentation. In the first video, I showed you how to make a quick edit in the online edit mode. In the second video, we downloaded Docfix, Visual Studio Code, and GitHub Desktop. For the third video, we returned to GitHub Desktop because we want to make a larger contribution to the DataMiner documentation. The first thing I want to mention before we get started with GitHub Desktop is that you can use any program you want aside from GitHub Desktop as well. We at Skyline Communications use GitHub Desktop because that's what we're familiar with. So remember, even though you use another program such as SourceTree, that we are much more familiar with GitHub Desktop and are thus more capable of helping you if you use the same program. But of course, you're allowed to use whatever you want. The first thing we want to do is create a new branch in GitHub Desktop. How do we do this? Well, we would create a new branch by clicking the New Branch button here at the top of your screen. But before we do that, and before I explain to you how creating a new branch is useful, we want to make sure that our main branch is up to date. To do so, we go to github.com and we go to the repository we are using. As you can see, my branch is not up to date, so we want to sync our fork and update the branch. Once we've done so, we return to GitHub Desktop and we fetch origin. We get this option to pull origin, and now you will see that these 13 commits that my fork was behind are now also added to my local host. So I'm currently still working on the main branch, as you can see here, but we want to make a new branch. Now, what is the purpose of a branch? Well, it has two very positive sides to it. First of all, it's very reviewer friendly. If you give your branch a name, then the reviewers at Skyline Communications know what you are working on, and not all your commits are sent to the same main branch. The second purpose of a branch is being able to work together with colleagues or with different people, and you can all push your commits to the same branch before making a pull request. So that's very useful, of course. If you were to make a new branch, we would click this button, but for the sake of this video, I've already prepared a branch called Soft Launch Options. Why did I call it Soft Launch Options? Because I will be editing the Soft Launch Options page. As you can see, I have a stash of changes stored already, and I can go ahead and restore those changes. Okay, as you can see, I've made a large contribution already. I've added 3 sub-pages to the Soft Launch Options page, and I've edited 2 other files in my Visual Studio Code. Let's go ahead and go to Visual Studio Code so I can show you what I've done. Maybe something useful to show you first as well is how to find files in your repository. As you can see, I've already entered it in my search toolbar. You just type in a hash. A hash always indicates a title, and then just type in the name of the title and it will bring you to the correct page. Now I'm brought to my Soft Launch Options page that I was currently working in. I return to the Explorer tab because now I get a full overview of where I'm working. What have I done? Well, let me show you in the documentation itself. This used to be the Soft Launch Options page. It was a long page with different subtitles, and what I did is divide it into 4 different pages so as to not make it as extensive of a single page. So as you can see, the Soft Launch Options page has been reduced to a shorter page, and here I refer to my sub-pages. I've created 3 new pages. Let me show you how I've done that. Imagine that I wanted to create another page in this folder, then I would right-click it, I would press New File, and I would give it a name. Very important is that you don't use spaces in your name, so let me just call it Test Page, and as you can see, I use an underscore instead of a space. Also very important is that I finish every page name with .md as to indicate that this is a markdown file. And then you can go ahead and click Enter and your page has been created. Every single markdown file starts with 3 hyphens, an enter, and a UID name. Now, what is a UID name? This is a way of Visual Studio Code to find files. So this is the official name of your markdown file. If you refer to a file, if you make a cross-reference, then you always enter that UID. So this is very important. If you make a cross-reference, make sure to just go to this UID name and to copy it straight from the source so that you don't make any mistakes. Let's just call this test page. So this is now the UID, and then we finish it off like this as well. And then you would go ahead and start typing on your page. So this is now the title. Let's click the preview button. You can see that this is the only thing I've now entered on the page, but it gives you an ID. Now that I've created my markdown file, I still need to enter this in the table of contents overview, because this will create the page, but if I don't enter it in the table of contents, then it won't show up in the overview on the eventual result. As you can see, I've already made the division between the different files. So we have the main file, the main page soft launch options, and I wanted to indicate that these three sub-files were not on the same level as my soft launch options page, but that these were sub-pages. And I did so by writing items, column, and then indenting it, and once again starting my row of files. As you can see, I always start by entering the name of the file. This is what will show up in the left side, and then afterwards entering the topic UID. Let's do so for our new file. So it's called test page, and then the topic UID is test page. Let me just go and verify. So the best thing you can actually do is just copy it and paste it over here. Now I haven't made any mistakes, but it's easier said than done. So this is how you enter it in your table of contents. Make sure to save it as well, because everything you didn't save won't show up in the eventual result. Okay, let's save this as well. The next thing I want to point out is how to add a note, because we can see one right here. What is the purpose of a note? Well, let's click the preview button once again so you can see it. It makes a bit of text stand out a lot more than the usual layout. Now, how do we add a note or a warning or something else that's important enough to stand out? Right here, you can see that there is an alert button. Let's go to our test page again and enter an alert. So we just click this button, and then at the top of our page, we're able to choose between a note, a tip, something that's important, a caution, and a warning. Let's go for a warning just for the sake of this video. And as you can see, this is something dangerous that will have certain consequences. So let's replace this text by our own text, and let's say we want to say, watch out, this is a warning. Okay, now in the end results, we should see that this has been turned into a warning block. So that's the purpose of that. Very useful, definitely if you don't want your readers to skim over something. Then the next thing I want to show you is how to create a table. This you can find next to the caution sign, next to this alert sign. Over here, insert a table, and then it asks you how many columns and rows you want. So let's say we want 3 columns and 2 rows, and you get a pre-made column table, which you can then replace text by, for instance, title 1, and then let's click the preview button. You can see that this has been adjusted. So that's an easy way to add a table. Let's go back to our files. Another thing I want to show you is how to make a cross-reference. Here you can see an example of such a cross-reference. In this case, we are referring to a page that is located in our own repository. So this means that we can just write xref : and then we add the UID. This is the same UID we just created over here. So if we were to refer to this page, we would write something in between square brackets. So this is what you would see on the page and would be able to click. So let's say click here. And then in between normal brackets, you add xref : and then test page, so the UID. Then if you were to click this in the final result, so this is how it will look, you will be brought to the test page. Now, this is obviously not necessary because this is already the test page, but this is just for the sake of the video. If you wanted to refer to a page in the repository, but to a certain subtitle, let's create one just to show you. So this is a subtitle 1. Then you could do the same, but you would add a hash to indicate that it's the title you're referring to. And then in all lowercase letters and without spaces, you would write subtitle 1. So every space that used to be in the title is replaced by a hyphen. Then a third way to make a reference or to link to a web page is by simply using the HTTP link. This is not meant for documents in the repository. Then a cross-reference is much better. But if you were to, let's once again make an example. If you were to type in www.google.be, then clicking this would lead you to Google. So those are 3 ways to make a reference to another page. The next thing I want to show you is how to add an image in your markdown file. The first thing I want to get out of the way is that it's important to use images sparingly. Why? Because they're not very update friendly. So make sure to only use images when they add value to your markdown file. For instance, when it's very hard to explain something without using images, then you would be allowed to use one. But if it's just for the sake of aesthetics, then leave them out. How do we add an image? The first thing we need to do is save one to your file explorer, and you can't just do this at random. There is a designated place where all images should go. In this case, we are working in the user guide folder. So there are several larger chunks in our repository, and I'm currently working in the soft launch options folder. But if you then look, you can see that I'm also working in the reference folder, and that this reference folder is located in the big chunk called user guide. So if I were to collapse this, you would be able to see all the big chunks in our repository. So as I'm working in the user guide, I also have to save my images in the images folder, which is located in the user guide folder. So you can find this here. If you want to know where this is located in your file explorer, go ahead, right-click it, and click Reveal in File Explorer. And this will show you all the images that have been saved already in this folder. So go ahead and add an image to this folder so that you can then add it to your markdown. I will go ahead and do so as well. So we save image as, and as you can see, I already am in this folder. So let's call it smiley and save it. Okay, now how do we add the image in markdown? We start by typing in an exclamation mark followed by square brackets, and in between these square brackets will go the name of the file. So let's call it smiley. Then it's followed by normal brackets, and here we enter the path of the image. So as I've already mentioned, we also start by typing in this, so just copy that down. And then we type in user guide because this was the folder, remember, where we found our images folder. Then a slash and images, another slash, and then you enter the name of your image. So we called it smiley. And of course, we need to mention whether it's PNG, JPEG, etc., because otherwise it won't find the image. Let's check the preview, and as you can see, I've added a huge smiley to my file, to my page, and it's worked. If you were to make one mistake in the way of writing this, then it would not show up. So let's just delete this slash to show you how it would look. And indeed, now you only see the name of the image. So also make sure that the name you choose for your image is something that is acceptable, because it might happen that something goes wrong, and then you don't want this to be something embarrassing. Okay, so let's re-enter the slash, and now it should work again. Okay, that's all I wanted to show you. If you want to read about this more in detail, make sure to go to the contributing file. Okay. The next thing I want to show you is how to make a local build of this. This is the last thing I'm going to do before making a pull request. Before we make the build, let's show you how to save. So I've already shown you this quickly, but we go to File and we save. So make sure that there are no unsaved changes left before you make your local build. Next, we want to open up a new terminal. To do so, we go to Terminal, we click New Terminal, and as you can see now, you can start typing over here. If this is the first time you are making a local build today, then you have to type in docfix metadata f. Click Enter, and what this will do is prepare your local host to create a build. So eventually you should end up with 5 warnings. This is completely normal. If you have no warnings, that's fine as well. But remember that in my case, I always get 5 warnings, so it's nothing to panic about. Okay, now that I've done that, I type in docfix build -f, and once again I click enter, and now you are making your local build. This might take up to 2 minutes, so I will see you once my build has finished. Okay, now that my build has finished, I see that it has succeeded, but with a warning. And this is what's so great about making a build. You see what is still messed up in your markdown file before you make a pull request. And now I can see what's wrong. I've added www.google.be, but this isn't the correct link. I should have written the correct link, and this would be http://google.be. So this would be correct, but now I've been alerted of this fact, which I wouldn't have been if I just made a pull request without checking this first. So that's the purpose of a build. The next thing we do is typing in docfix serve_site, pressing enter, and then I get a local host in which I can see my version of the documentation. Let's click user guide, because that's what I was working on. In reference, the soft launch options page, and now I see that it's my new page. So I also have these sub pages in the left corner, so in the left of my page. So let's click this. As you can see, everything works perfectly. So now I know that I've done everything right. And even my test page has been added with a huge smiley. So as you can see, that's all worked perfectly. Let's return to my markdown, and let me just delete this test page because we don't need it in the eventual result. Let me also go to the table of contents and erase that as well. And then, of course, I need to go ahead and save that once again, and I no longer have any unsaved changes. That means I can go ahead and make my pull request. This I do in GitHub Desktop. Once again, you get this overview. Now I can also see that I've added a smiley, which will no longer show up because it was mentioned on the test page, etc., etc. So let's go ahead and delete the smiley as well. Okay, and now I want to make a commit. Let's name it soft launch options pages and make the commit to my branch. I still need to push origin, and then it will give me the option to make a pull request. This will bring me to github.com. Once again, I can create a pull request just like in video 1. I click this button, and then I have to wait for the reviewers to check this out and see whether it can be merged into main. I hope this was a handy video, and if you still want more information on contributing to the DataMiner documentation, make sure to check out our contributing page in the documentation as well. Thank you for your attention.